50 Reasons We're Glad We Grew Up in the 1970s. Remember the days when life felt a little slower, a little brighter, and the world was filled with endless wonder? Growing up in the 1970s gave us memories that still warm our hearts. Today, let's dust off those old memories and explore 50 reasons we're truly grateful we grew up in the 70s. Unsupervised outdoor play. Back then, life stretched out before you the instant you pushed open the front door. In the 1970s, growing up meant you held your own clock and your own instincts, with only a quick shout of, "Be home for dinner," echoing behind you. Cities, suburbs, and dusty country roads all held the same promise. Endless room to roam without an adult's shadow hovering nearby. We didn't need phones to check in or tracking devices to keep us tethered. Instead, the streets, fields, and playgrounds became our training grounds for life. Every empty lot was a kingdom waiting to be claimed. Every stretch of cracked sidewalk a race course for our battered bikes. Friendships were forged in games of tag under the open sky, and plans were drawn in the dirt with nothing but sticks and wild imagination. We learned quickly how to settle disputes, forge alliances, and dream big, all without a grown-up jumping in to guide us. It was a different kind of childhood, woven from scraped knees, daring adventures, and an unspoken confidence that life beyond the front door was ours to uncover, one dusty footprint at a time. Star Wars first experience. Bright summer afternoons in 1977 found us piling into theaters, not quite sure what awaited us behind those heavy velvet curtains. Without advanced spoilers, no social media buzz, and barely a whisper in the halls at school, stepping into Star Wars was like opening the door to a galaxy no one even realized existed. Characters whose names would soon become legendary, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia, were total unknowns as the lights dimmed and that unforgettable yellow crawl began its slow journey up the screen. Instantly, the room dissolved into swirling starfields and the impossible roar of spaceships overhead. No one was armed with expectations or must-see lists. Everything was fresh, unfiltered, a stunning surprise that, for many, forever shifted what movies could be. Each dogfight, every breathtaking alien landscape, and the very sight of a lightsaber crackling through the darkness sent our hearts racing and sparked imaginations that stayed alive long after the credits rolled. Star Wars didn't just change the way we experienced movies. It etched itself into our memories, inspiring awe and forging connections among everyone lucky enough to witness it for the first time. In your opinion, what made growing up in the 70s truly special? Jaws summer movie scare. Can you remember the thrill of nights when going for a swim suddenly felt like an act of courage? In 1975, Jaws didn't just hit the big screen, it sank its teeth straight into our imaginations. Instead of over-the-top effects, Spielberg delivered a masterclass in suspense. It was the haunting notes of the soundtrack and the unseen menace lurking below the waves that sent chills rippling through movie theaters. The real terror came from what we couldn't see, letting our minds fill in the blanks with something far scarier than any rubber shark. After watching Jaws, no pond, public pool, or even a bathtub could escape that lingering feeling of danger. Kids and adults alike would glance nervously at the water's surface, half expecting a dark fin to glide into view at any second. It was as if every ripple could conceal a hidden threat, and laughter during pool parties turned to shrieks the instant someone disappeared underwater. This movie not only redefined what a thriller could be, but also stitched itself into the fabric of American pop culture, reminding us all how powerful our imaginations truly are. Video arcades and quarters. A pocket full of quarters once held the promise of pure excitement as we made our way to the neighborhood arcade. With each coin weighing in our hands, anticipation built with every step toward those glowing doors. The moment we walked in, Flashing screens and the symphony of game sounds swept us into a place alive with vibrant colors and spirited competition. Every machine brought a fresh challenge, and sliding a quarter into the slot was like unlocking a path to endless adventures. Whether we were battling aliens, chasing high scores, or simply watching friends try their luck, every minute was a small adventure shared. The clatter of buttons, bursts of victory, and shouts over the clamor created a contagious energy that brought us together. Trips to the arcade weren't just about games. They were about laughter, bonding, and the joy of being part of something electric. Those spaces became the hub for stories and new friendships, a gathering spot where teamwork met competition, and every visit etched another line in the story of our youth. Shag carpet snow angels. Sinking into a sea of shag carpeting brought the cozy retreat every kid wished for, a space crafted entirely for youthful adventures. Those thick, fluffy fibers welcomed you like an old friend, offering a soft, forgiving place to stretch out, roll around, or simply vanish into for a little while. It wasn't just floor covering. It was a playground, a napping spot, a daydreaming station, all wrapped into one impossibly cozy package. After a long day of school or a marathon session of make-believe games, sprawling out on that plush carpet was the ultimate reward. We'd invent our own fun, making snow angels by sweeping our arms and legs through the shag, watching patterns ripple and vanish with each playful move. The experience stayed with us, a moment when time slowed to a hush, and everything beyond the living room walls quietly drifted from view. Shag carpets didn't just fill a room, they created an atmosphere where comfort, imagination, and a carefree spirit could thrive. Even now, thinking about that soft, endless ocean of fibers brings back a warmth that no sleek hardwood floor could ever match. Riding bikes, no helmet. With nothing but our bikes and an endless stretch of pavement ahead, we threw ourselves into the unknown without hesitation. Riding wasn't burdened by helmets or elbow pads. It was untamed freedom, the kind that made you believe you could outrun anything in your path. Helmets were a rare sight, usually appearing only when a cautious parent intervened, and even then, strapping one on felt as if you were showing up to a battle still clinging to training wheels. Every outing turned into a challenge. Who could coast the farthest without pedaling? Who dared to race down the steepest hill? Who could land the boldest jump? The cracked sidewalks, uneven driveways, and stray gravel patches were part of the course, not obstacles to avoid. Falls were inevitable, but we wore our scrapes like medals, proud of every bruise that came from pushing a little harder, going a little faster. In those moments, it wasn't about worrying what might happen. It was about chasing the wind, trusting the rush, and carving a path that was completely our own. Riding wasn't just a way to get somewhere. It was a declaration of freedom we felt in every breathless laugh and dusty trail behind us. If you enjoyed this walk down memory lane, give us a like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a trip back in time. Farrah Fawcett Swimsuit poster. If you stepped into any teenager's room in the late 70s, you'd almost certainly spot a familiar figure. Farrah Fawcett, sun-kissed and confident in her unmistakable red bathing suit, beaming down from the wall. That single poster didn't just decorate our bedrooms. It captured the very pulse of the era. For many, having that image was as essential as owning a favorite album or a cherished lucky charm. It was a silent badge of membership to the coolest club in town, a gentle nudge that you were tuned into what mattered, even if only in your own small corner of the world. What made Farrah more than just another celebrity was the way she projected both glamour and warmth. With her feathered blonde hair perfectly framing her face and that easy, radiant smile, she seemed approachable, yet untouchable, all at once. The poster was more than glossy paper. It became a symbol that brought kids together from different neighborhoods and social circles. Each time someone glanced up at that now iconic image, they found a bit of courage to dream, and maybe even a fleeting sense that they belong to something larger than themselves. A pop culture phenomenon, yes, but also a shared memory that still brings a smile decades later. In the story of our youth, this poster is a chapter all its own. Tiger Beat Teen Magazine. Did you ever flip through the pages of Tiger Beat, feeling like each headline held the key to a secret world? For so many of us growing up in the 70s, that simple, glossy magazine meant far more than mere celebrity gossip. It represented the heart of our dreams and crushes. Week after week, we'd eagerly hunt for the latest issue at corner stores or supermarket checkouts, knowing those pages would be bursting with snapshots of teen heartthrobs like Sean Cassidy or Leif Garrett, smiling that perfect smile as if just for us. Tiger Beat didn't just report on stars. It transported us, if only briefly, into a universe where posters plastered on bedroom walls and exclusive interviews made stardom seem within reach. While our parents fretted about grown-up headlines and world events, none of that really touched us. Our universe revolved around pop idols, fun quizzes, and those breathless, larger-than-life stories. In its own way, the magazine taught us the first lessons in fandom and imagination, sparking friendships and sleepover discussions that lingered long into the night. Tiger Beat was more than news. It was pure escape, and we cherished every page. Vinyl, cassette, 8-track. How sweet was the feeling of holding your favorite album in your hands, knowing the wonder tucked inside. In the 1970s, music wasn't just something you listened to, it was something you lived with. Vinyl records, cassette tapes, and 8 tracks, each offered their own doorway into a world of sound and imagination. Spinning a vinyl was almost like a little ceremony, sliding the record from its sleeve, brushing off the dust, and gently setting the needle as warm, crackling melodies poured into every corner of the room. Album covers weren't just packaging, they were masterpieces on their own, filled with vivid artwork and stories woven into the liner notes, drawing you closer to the artist's vision. Meanwhile, cassette tapes ushered in a new kind of freedom. Slim enough to tuck into a pocket, they turned car rides and quiet afternoons into private concerts. And sitting right there in the mix were the chunky, sometimes finicky 8 tracks. Clumsy, but groundbreaking, daring to bring continuous music into our lives in a way we hadn't seen before. Each format had its own soul, and together, they helped shape a generation's soundtrack. Station wagon road trips. The old station wagon, loaded to bursting and rumbling along endless highways, once played the soundtrack to our childhood summers. Traveling cross-country in the 1970s was an experience stitched together by patience, imagination, and a whole lot of family togetherness. GPS hadn't yet entered the picture, and the idea of handheld gadgets to entertain us was still the stuff of science fiction. Instead, we tumbled into the wide, vinyl-clad back seat, elbow to elbow, with a cooler full of sandwiches and a map sprawled across the dashboard. Hours on the open road stretched like lazy rivers, and we invented ways to keep our minds busy. Games like I Spy, punch buggy contests, and counting cows out the window became the highlights of those long drives. As the sun dipped lower, conversation would slow, replaced by quiet daydreaming. We'd press our faces against the warm glass, watching telephone poles march past in steady rhythm, lulled by the engine's gentle rumble. Somewhere between towns, you couldn't name, and skies so vast they stretched without end. Those rides stitched lasting memories that no modern screen could ever erase. Bowl-cut hairstyles. Kitchen scissors in hand and a determined gleam in their eyes, parents in America set out to create the ultimate 70s look, the bowl cut. You didn't have to live in Hollywood or flip through glossy magazines to know it was the style to beat. Thanks in part to pint-sized TV stars like Adam Rich from 8 is Enough, this charmingly lopsided haircut found its way into living rooms, schoolyards, and family photo albums everywhere. It didn't matter if you lived on a bustling city block or a sleepy cul-de-sac. That unmistakable dome-shaped do was practically a requirement. Some kids ended up with perfect circles, others with uneven slopes and stubborn cowlicks jutting out defiantly. But that unpredictability was part of the charm. It was a hairstyle that paid no mind to bank accounts or fancy salons. In its own scrappy way, the bowl cut became a badge of belonging, an unofficial membership into the carefree world of 70s childhood. Looking back, it's easy to laugh at the uneven bangs and lumpy crowns. But back then, we walked taller, convinced we looked like television royalty. Insane 1970s fashion. What's the first crazy outfit that pops into your mind when you think about growing up in the 70s? Maybe it's a pair of electric blue bell-bottoms or a shirt so loud it practically needed its own volume control. Fashion. In the 1970s wasn't just about looking good. It was an unapologetic declaration, a celebration of individuality woven into every bold pattern and polyester seam. Across the country, teens and grown-ups alike dove headfirst into the madness, flaunting oversized collars, wild colors, and pants that rippled in the breeze like flags of rebellion. Platform shoes transformed every sidewalk into a personal runway, even if staying upright demanded the balance of a tightrope walker. And let's not forget those psychedelic prints, swirling in every hue imaginable, turning even a grocery store visit into something that resembled an art exhibit. Sure, flipping through old albums today might spark a chuckle or two, but underneath the laughter lingers a genuine pride. The 70s gave everyone permission to be as outrageous as they dared, and honestly, we loved every minute of it. If you had to sum up your 70s childhood in one word, what would it be? The bump dance move. What could top a dance move so easy that everyone, from the quietest wallflower to the boldest show-off, could pick it up in just minutes? In the 1970s, the bump swept through school gyms, basements, and dance halls like a wave of pure, unfiltered joy. All you needed was a little rhythm, a willing partner, and enough space to nudge hips with a grin. It wasn't flashy or complicated, but that was the beauty of it. No fancy footwork required, just a playful bump in time with the beat. Songs like KC and the Sunshine Band's Shake Your Booty would ignite the whole room, and before long, everyone was swaying and bumping to the same carefree rhythm. It felt daring, a little mischievous even, but always good-natured. The bump wasn't just a dance, it was a shared language, an unspoken agreement that for a few minutes, nobody cared who had the best moves or who kept perfect time. We were all just part of the same glorious, hip-bumping celebration. Schoolhouse rock cartoons. In living rooms across America, Schoolhouse rock brought the joy of learning straight into our homes, wrapped in cheerful melodies and lively animation. With each clever tune, subjects like multiplication, grammar, and civics came to life. Suddenly, rules about conjunctions danced alongside playful characters, and even the legislative process felt downright catchy. The brilliance of the show was how it delivered essential knowledge in the guise of toe-tapping songs, easy enough for any young mind to absorb without realizing just how much was sinking in. Even years later, lines from Conjunction Junction or I'm Just a Bill pop into our heads as easily as our favorite childhood jingles. Beyond entertainment, Schoolhouse rock served as a connection between the classroom and daily life, unraveling tricky concepts through lively, memorable storytelling. For kids of the 70s, these vibrant cartoons transformed education into a joy, a bond that has endured across generations, weaving together music, laughter, and a love for learning that still resonates today. Rotary phone long cord. How far would you stretch a phone cord just to have a little moment of privacy? In the 1970s, a private conversation wasn't something you could take for granted. It was a battlefield of strategy, stealth, and the flexibility of your rotary cord. Telephones in those days were bolted to the wall like permanent fixtures, often positioned right in the heart of household commotion, usually the kitchen. If you wanted a conversation that wasn't broadcast to the whole family, you had to get creative, and fast. We'd pull that coiled cord to its absolute limit, tiptoeing around chairs, dodging pets, and weaving past siblings, hoping to find a quiet corner where secrets could be safely exchanged. Reaching a closet or a hallway was like snagging a small triumph. But if the cord fell short mid-escape, you'd be left whispering under your breath, struggling to muffle each word while plates clattered and conversations buzzed around you. It wasn't graceful, and it definitely wasn't easy. But somehow, those awkward, tangled negotiations made every word we shared feel even more important. Saturday morning cartoons. On certain Saturday nights, the living room light glowed well past bedtime as whispers and muffled giggles traveled down the hallway. The forbidden thrill of Saturday Night Live beckoned. More than just a show, it stood as a daring invitation into the unpredictable realm of grown-up comedy, where anything could unfold, and usually did. The cast paraded across the screen with irreverent sketches, musical guests, and the sort of wit that soared right over our young heads, though we tried our best to keep up. Huddling together under one blanket or sneaking glances from behind the staircase, we savored every stolen moment. Catching even snippets of SNL felt like holding a secret handshake to adulthood, a coded sign that we, too, could belong to a collective just beyond reach. As unpredictable as a deck of wild cards, each episode delivered jokes and characters we'd mimic for weeks, trading catchphrases and laughter at school. Looking back, those sleepless nights offered more than mischief. They introduced us to the powerful pull of live television, raw, unscripted, and unforgettable. Flexible school lunches. Walking into a school cafeteria in the 1970s meant entering a place where nutrition took a back seat to hearty appetites and everyday indulgences. Lunch trays were filled with generous helpings of chili burgers, oven-crisped chicken, buttered corn that gleamed under fluorescent lights, and, without fail, a wobbly square of fruit gelatin perched in the corner. By today's standards, these meals would never pass a health inspection, but during those years, hardly anyone gave it a second thought. What mattered most was that the food was hot, plentiful, and cheap enough to feed hundreds of growing kids without breaking the budget. We didn't count carbs or check sodium levels. We counted how fast we could finish so we could get back to recess. The flavors were bold and comforting, a small daily reward tucked between spelling tests and math drills. Looking back now, it's easy to smile at how those cafeteria classics, however questionable in their nutritional value, managed to leave such a lasting impression. They fed not just our stomachs, but a kind of everyday joy that made school life feel a little more bearable. Sesame Street and Muppet Show. Was there anything better than growing up with both Sesame Street and The Muppet Show? In the heart of our childhood, these two television treasures transformed living rooms into spaces of delight, wonder, and laughter. Sesame Street introduced us to a neighborhood where monsters and humans lived side by side, teaching valuable lessons using catchy songs, gentle humor, and characters that quickly became friends. Big Bird's compassion, Cookie Monster's antics, and the playful rivalry between Ernie and Bert all left lasting marks on our hearts and minds. As the sun set and evening rolled in, The Muppet Show took over with its chaotic backstage energy and wacky performances. Scenes would burst with color as Kermit tried desperately to keep the show on track amid jokes, musical numbers, and guest stars who seemed just as thrilled to join the madness as we were to watch. This blend of clever puppetry, satire, and star power bridged the generation gap, giving kids and parents plenty to share and laugh about together. Both shows did more than entertain. They taught empathy, creativity, and the joy of imagination that continues to inspire long after the credits rolled. Saturday Night Live Sneak. There was something electric about those late weekends, a buzz in the air that only grew stronger as the clock ticked closer to midnight. Saturday Night Live wasn't just another television show. It offered a secret handshake into a mischievous realm we weren't quite old enough to explore. For kids peeking through the cracks of adulthood, those sketch comedies and wild musical acts held a forbidden thrill you couldn't find anywhere else. We'd plot our strategy early, pretending to be half asleep while secretly listening for the opening theme song. Slipping past skeptical parents took real skill, but it was worth every ounce of trouble. Even catching a single skit made us feel like insiders, witnessing a brand of humor far bolder than anything the networks dared to show before dinner time. The sets were wild, the jokes sometimes zipped right over our heads, and the guest stars sparkled with an edgy charm that left us starry-eyed. SNL in those days wasn't just late-night entertainment. It was a messy, brilliant, hilarious gateway to the grown-up world, and boy, it made staying up feel like the ultimate adventure. Fred Rogers, Safety Feeling. Have you ever thought about how one gentle voice could make everything seem a little less overwhelming? During the 1970s, when life was often noisy, uncertain, and shifting rapidly, Fred Rogers offered something rare, a quiet place where children could find a moment of calm. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood wasn't just another program slotted between Saturday cartoons. It was a refuge, a steady hand reaching through the television screen. His soft-spoken words, the unhurried pace of his conversations, and that heartfelt invitation, "Won't you be my neighbor?" opened a door to a space where kindness rose above the noise of chaos. Fred didn't need flashing lights or booming soundtracks to captivate us. Instead, he gave us dignity and understanding, speaking to our worries without ever making them feel silly. Every visit to his neighborhood taught more than lessons. It affirmed that we were worthy of love and capable of facing our own fears. In an era long before smartphones and endless media noise, Fred Rogers built a space where kids felt seen, heard, and most of all, safe. The Fonz, Happy Days. A leather jacket, a knowing smile, and a quick "I" were all it took to turn an ordinary guy into a living legend. Watching Fonzie on Happy Days was like witnessing pure brilliance, the kind that didn't rely on fireworks or grand speeches to leave a lasting impression. Henry Winkler's portrayal of the Fonz wasn't just about style. It was about an attitude so natural, it appeared to be woven into his very being. Every small gesture held meaning. Whether he tapped a jukebox and made it sing, or flashed that relaxed grin that could ease even the tensest moment, Fonzie navigated life with a quiet strength that kids and adults alike wish they could somehow bottle up and keep. He made bravery look natural, standing up for friends and doing the right thing without ever losing that unmistakable cool. In a decade that celebrated bold personalities, Fonzie stood apart, not because he shouted the loudest, but because he knew exactly who he was. And somehow, he made the rest of us believe we could find that same unshakable confidence inside ourselves too. Pet Rocks Craze. A tiny rock nestled securely in a pocket could hold enormous value to a kid growing up in the 1970s. During an era when imagination outweighed price tags, even the most unassuming pebble could become a steadfast companion. We gave them names, made up elaborate backstories, and proudly paraded them around like prize-winning show dogs, only a lot quieter and considerably less work. What made it even more magical was the fact that many of us actually bought our pet rocks, spending real allowance money on something we could have picked up from any sidewalk or backyard. Street vendors and shops caught onto the craze quickly, packaging ordinary stones in fancy boxes or with tiny birth certificates, convincing us that ours was different, special somehow. Of course, the rocks didn't fetch sticks or wag their tails, but none of that mattered. It wasn't about what the pet could do. It was about the feeling it gave us. in an era before screens and gadgets filled every spare moment. Even a small stone resting in your palm could unlock endless adventures and stories waiting to unfold. 20 bizarre 1970s beauty trends everyone hated, until they tried them. 70s beauty was not only vibrant, but also distinctly funky. People initially disapproved of the trends, but eventually they experimented with them. So, what were cringe-worthy fads that turned into iconic style statements? Stay tuned as we're diving into 20 bizarre beauty trends in the 1970s that went from laughable to legendary. The feathered hair frenzy. In the heart of every 1970s home, there was a mirror that knew your dreams, and a blow-dryer that knew your battles. Feathered hair wasn't just a trend, it was a rite of passage, a silent promise that you were ready to take on the world, one perfectly flipped layer at a time. Farrah Fawcett didn't just start a hairstyle, she ignited a movement. Back then, the bathroom became sacred ground. You stood in the heat of curling irons and hairspray fog, determined to sculpt something that made you feel seen. Flip, spray, tease, check, repeat. And even when the mirror said almost, your heart whispered, keep going. Because this wasn't just about looking good, it was about daring to believe you could be more. Of course, humidity was the great betrayer. One wrong step outside, and hours of hope deflated into frizz. I still see my mother's face in the reflection, part exhausted, part defiant, never defeated. Her bangs standing tall like armor, her eyes saying, I earned this. That's the thing about feathered hair. It wasn't just a look, it was a battle cry in soft waves, a badge of confidence, a quiet, radiant rebellion, blown, brushed, and built strand by strand. The wedge haircut. Some hairstyles fade with the seasons, others make history on live television. In the 1970s, one particular cut took the spotlight and never really gave it back. Enter the wedge. Sharp, clean, and full of attitude, it was more than just a haircut. It was a movement. Originally crafted by a protege of Vidal Sassoon, the wedge may have been born in a salon, but it earned its fame on the ice. When Olympic figure skater Dorothy Hamill spun into America's hearts in 1976, her hair followed suit, literally. It bounced, flipped, and framed her face with such precision that within weeks, salons couldn't keep up with the demand. The real magic of the wedge? Its versatility. Whether you had pin-straight locks or a bit of natural wave, this style delivered instant polish without the usual high-maintenance drama. Plus, it walked a fine line between sporty and chic. A cut that could take you from gym class to Friday night disco with just a flick of a brush. And perhaps best of all, it looked like you tried without trying too hard. In an era of big beauty statements, the wedge was proof that sometimes less really is more. Jerry curl. Do you remember the first time you saw a jerry curl shimmer under a streetlight or leave its unmistakable mark on the back of a couch? Not many hairstyles captured the spirit of an era quite like this one. By the late 70s and well into the 80s, this glossy, springy look was turning heads and staining collars across America. Developed by hairstylist and chemist Jerry Redding, the jerry curl offered a new kind of freedom. Soft, shiny, manageable curls that felt like a revolution compared to the bone-straight styles and tight perms of the past. Of course, the upkeep was no joke. The two-step chemical process transformed the hair's texture, but daily maintenance was key. Activator sprays and moisturizers were practically glued to the routine. Quite literally, judging by the grease trails they left behind. Still, for many, it was worth it. That bounce and shine meant confidence, swagger, and a statement of identity. What really cemented the style's status was its high-profile debut in the mainstream. When Michael Jackson sported the look on the cover of Thriller, the best-selling album of all time, The Jerry curl went from barbershop favorite to cultural icon overnight. Even though the trend faded by the 90s, its legacy never did. The Jerry curl wasn't just a hairstyle, it was a bold chapter in Black beauty history. Tell me, if you had to bring back just one of these trends, which one's making a comeback in your world? Natural hair movement. Some movements don't start with speeches or protests. They begin with a single decision in front of a mirror. In the late 60s, as voices for civil rights grew louder, so did the decision to let natural hair grow freely. The afro wasn't just a style, it was a statement. It told the world, "This is who I am. No filter, no apology." And for many, that decision felt revolutionary. But like all things cultural, styles shifted. By the 80s, the Jerry curl swept in with its glossy coils and chemical upkeep. Yet even then, the roots of self-acceptance never disappeared. They just quietly waited for their comeback. That resurgence finally hit full force in the early 2000s, when more and more Black women and men began embracing their curls, coils, and kinks once again. No more harsh relaxers or painful straightening, just hair worn in its truest form. In fact, chemical relaxer sales dropped by over 25% within 5 years, a sign that people weren't just following a trend, they were reclaiming their identity. Today, natural hair isn't about fitting in, it's about standing tall. And in a world that's always trying to reshape us, there's something incredibly powerful about choosing to stay exactly as we are. Clinique, Black Honey Lipstick. Who would have thought that a lipstick so dark it looked like a Halloween prop would become one of the most beloved beauty staples of all time? Clinique's Black Honey is one of those rare gems. First introduced in the 1970s, it looked almost intimidating in the tube. Deep, dark, nearly gothic. But once applied, it transformed into something unexpectedly soft and flattering, a sheer berry tint that magically adapted to every skin tone. It's no wonder people became obsessed. Originally sold in a tiny gloss pot, Black Honey later evolved into the beloved almost lipstick format by 1989, a perfect hybrid between a balm and a lipstick, with just enough pigment to give lips that your color but better effect. And here's what's wild. Even decades later, it hasn't lost its charm. When it went viral on TikTok, a whole new generation discovered what those of us from the 70s already knew. This shade works for everyone. It's effortless, no mirror needed, and somehow always just right. Now, Clinique has extended the shade into glosses, blush, and eyeshadow, but the original remains the icon. Because in a world of bold reds and trendy nudes, Black Honey quietly proves that timeless beauty doesn't need to shout. It just needs to show up. Frosted lipstick. Back in the days when discos lit up the night and every outfit had a little shimmer, lip color didn't just complete the look, it stole the spotlight. In the dazzling days of the 70s, lips weren't blushing softly in nude or matte tones. They gleamed like polished chrome, kissed with icy sheens and hues that turned heads and caught every flicker of party light. Frosted lipstick wasn't just a cosmetic, it was a cultural statement, shimmering from soft pinks to silvers so bright they looked almost futuristic. This wasn't about blending in, it was about bold entrances. The glint of that metallic shine gave lips an otherworldly glow, especially when paired with teased hair and electric blue eyeshadow. The result? A full glam fantasy that could rival any disco ball. Beauty brands jumped on the craze, launching lipsticks with names like Moonbeam Rose and Electric Snow. They flew off shelves, packed into purses for school dances, dates at the roller rink, or just a trip to the mall with friends. Sure, it was dramatic, maybe even a little impractical, but that sparkle wasn't just for show. It was confidence in a tube, reflecting a decade that believed more was always more. Sea Breeze Astringent. Before skincare meant self-care and spa days, it meant bracing yourself for battle, and nothing captured that spirit better than a certain infamous blue bottle. Seabreeze was less of a toner and more of a test of willpower. Slathering it on wasn't just part of a routine, it was a rite of passage. Back in the 70s, the harsher the burn, the better the clean. And Seabreeze, it didn't cleanse, it scorched. The moment that soaked cotton ball hit your face, it felt like the pores were screaming. Oil didn't stand a chance. Neither did your tear ducts. It tingled, it stung, it left your skin radiating both freshness and mild regret. And let's talk about that smell. Like hospital-grade disinfectant with a whisper of menthol and a punch of, "Are you sure this is safe?" Yet despite the sting and sinus-clearing scent, people swore by it. Why? Because smooth, stingy skin meant you were doing something right. Modern products might pamper your face with words like hydrating and soothing, but Seabreeze had no such mercy. It didn't coddle, it conquered. And in a decade that prided itself on boldness, that's exactly what made it legendary. Noxzema Cold Cream. Was it even a real bathroom in the 70s if there wasn't a blue jar of Noxzema staring back at you from the medicine cabinet? Noxzema wasn't just a cleanser, it was a catch-all, a cure-all, and for many, practically a religion. Its signature scent hit you before the lid was even off. A strange cocktail of menthol, camphor, and something that smelled vaguely like a medicine cabinet on overdrive. The moment it touched your skin, you knew it meant business. It didn't just sit there politely. It tingled, it numbed. It woke you up faster than your alarm clock ever could. Need something for sunburn? Reach for Noxzema. Breakout brewing? Noxzema to the rescue. Feeling off and don't know why. Somehow, Noxzema still felt like the answer. Slathered on thick, it gave the illusion of healing, even if you had to peel off the excess like dried Elmer's glue. But what really cemented its place in beauty history? Trust. For an entire generation, Noxzema wasn't trendy or fancy. It just worked. And in a world without endless options on store shelves, that kind of reliability was golden. Perms for men and women. There was a moment in late 70s America when stepping into a salon felt like stepping onto a stage, and your hair was the headline act. Perms weren't just a beauty trend, they were a bold declaration of self, swagger, and just enough rebellion to make your parents nervous. And this time, it wasn't just the women chasing curls. Men dove in too, eager for that springy bounce that screamed Saturday Night Fever louder than any disco ball could. These coils came with a promise, volume, texture, and a touch of drama. But getting there? That was a leap of faith. You sat under fluorescent lights, hair wrapped in tiny rods, trusting the stylist and the chemicals not to betray you. Results ranged from soft spirals to full-on poodle power, depending on your luck and the strength of the perm solution. And let's not forget the smell, a lingering cocktail of ammonia, hairspray, and second thoughts. Some embraced the fluff, while others punked it out, hacking off the curls and adding neon dye just to rebel. But no matter the outcome, your hair didn't whisper. It shouted. It told the world what decade you belonged to, and that you owned every glorious strand of it. Electric blue eyeshadow. What did confidence look like in the 1970s? Just open an old makeup case, and you'll find the answer smeared across every eyelid in the country. Electric blue eyeshadow, loud enough to rival a jukebox, and just as unforgettable. In a decade where subtlety took a back seat to self-expression, this blazing blue hue didn't whisper. It shouted. It wasn't applied with caution either. We're talking full commitment, swept boldly from lash line to brow bone like a Technicolor war cry. You'd spot it everywhere, in school hallways, under disco balls, even behind the counter at the local diner. And it never traveled alone. It came with a full glam entourage, frosted pink lips, blush you could see from space, and bangs feathered into perfect gravity-defying wings. But here's the catch. It looked fabulous, until it didn't. The summer sun turned it into a melty mess, leaving shimmery trails that sparkled more than anyone asked for. Still, for better or worse, it became iconic. Part rebellion, part beauty pageant, it captured the fearless spirit of the time. And while we may chuckle at it now, back then, that bold blue shadow wasn't just makeup. It was a statement, and it was absolutely everywhere. Which of these 70s trends would you like to try today? Please share your thoughts in the comment. Baby oil tanning. Summer didn't start until the baby oil came out. One whiff of that sweet, powdery scent mixed with warm breeze and you knew it was tanning season. And nothing, absolutely nothing, glowed quite like skin drenched in baby oil under the blazing sun. It wasn't sunscreen. It was the opposite. A slick, glistening accelerator that turned backyards and beaches into DIY tanning salons. Forget SPF. In the 70s, the goal wasn't protection. It was perfection, measured in shades of golden brown and the ability to leave tan lines as proof of effort. The more reflective your setup, the better. People laid out with foil visors, mirrored blankets, and zero shame. By day's end, your skin didn't just tan, it sizzled. That deep, even color came at a cost. Heat rash, sunburn, and the inevitable peeling that followed like clockwork. But oddly enough, that flaking phase wasn't seen as a failure. It was almost a badge of honor, evidence that you'd fully committed to the summer look. These days, we slather on SPF 50 and chase our glow through tinted moisturizers. But back then, we chased the sun raw, armed with oil, optimism, and a wild disregard for future dermatology bills. It was reckless. It was radiant. And somehow, it felt worth it. Sun and hair lightener. Nothing said, "I'm ready for my close-up," quite like a mist of citrus and blind optimism. In the 70s, Sun-In was the golden ticket to looking like you'd just stepped off a Malibu beach, minus the ocean, the sand, or the genetics. It came in a cheerful little bottle that smelled like lemonade and teenage dreams, promising effortless blonde streaks with just a few spritzes and a stroll in the sun. The ads made it look magical. Sunlight meets science, and voila, golden goddess. But real life? That depended on your hair color, the weather, and possibly divine intervention. For brunettes, the transformation often leaned less Farrah Fawcett and more cooked spaghetti squash. Still, we sprayed it anyway, liberally, lovingly, and usually without adult supervision. It wasn't just about the color, it was the ritual, the way you stood in the backyard like a sunflower, eyes closed, waiting for the magic to set in. That zesty smell lingered for days, long after the results had set in. For better or hilariously worse. Sun-In may not have made us all California blondes, but it gave us something better. A wild sense of possibility in a bottle. And honestly, that glow-up gamble was half the fun. Tickle deodorant. Sometimes a product doesn't catch on because it works better. It catches on because it looks like it should be fun. Enter Tickle, the most peculiar deodorant ever, to grace a neon-colored bottle. In the late 70s, this oversized roll-on took hygiene and spun it into something that felt more like a game than a routine. It wasn't just about staying fresh. It was about the vibe. The packaging looked like a toy. The name sounded like a giggle, and the commercials leaned all the way in with pastel visuals and bubbly jingles. It practically begged to be shown off in gym class lockers or passed around during sleepovers. And while traditional deodorants promised strength and subtlety, Tickle leaned into novelty. Its bulbous applicator, fruity scent, and unapologetically playful design made it feel like a beauty accessory instead of just a body care item. For many girls, it was the gateway to womanhood, framed in glitter and glam. Of course, guys mostly steered clear. The packaging alone was enough to send them running for the nearest stick of unscented whatever. But for a moment in time, Tickle wasn't just a deodorant, it was a cultural moment wrapped in plastic and perfume. If you found this video fascinating, give it a like and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you won't miss what's coming next. Overplucked eyebrows. Isn't it wild to think a tiny pair of tweezers once held so much control over how we saw ourselves? With shaky hands and a whole lot of confidence, we plucked our brows thinner and thinner, chasing the high-arched look made famous by every 90s beauty icon. But while trends moved on, our poor follicles weren't so quick to recover. Turns out, overplucking wasn't just a phase, it became a lifelong lesson in regret. Biology didn't do us any favors either. Unlike scalp hair, brow hairs grow in shorter cycles, making damage quick and repair painfully slow, if it happened at all. Some brows simply waved the white flag. No serum, oil, or whispered apology could bring them back. By 2013, brow regrowth products were flying off shelves, signaling a return to more natural looks. Chemical relaxers were out, fuller brows were in. But for those of us who survived the thin brow trend, the memories and missing hairs still linger. Today, fluffier brows reign supreme. Still, if you've got a brow pencil tucked in your purse, just in case, you're not alone. Once bitten by the tweezer bug, always a little cautious. Shag haircut. Some hairstyles just look like they've lived a little, and the shag cut is one of them. With its messy layers, feathered edges, and devil-may-care attitude, the shag wasn't just a haircut, it was a whole mood in the 70s. Originally crafted by stylist Paul McGregor for Jane Fonda in Clute, it quickly became the go-to for rock stars, rebels, and anyone who didn't want to look too done. Think David Bowie, Stevie Nicks, and the kind of cool you can't fake. But the shag isn't stuck in the past. Over the years, it's reinvented itself again and again. From the soft, voluminous versions of the 90s, yes, even the Rachel was technically a shag, to today's edgy wolf cuts, spotted on Billie Eilish and Gen Z trendsetters. Its secret? Built-in personality and barely any effort. Better yet, it works on nearly every hair type and texture, which makes it the kind of timeless style that doesn't need constant babysitting. Just add a little texturizing spray, skip the flat iron, and let the layers do their thing. In a world obsessed with perfection, the shag reminds us that a little chaos can be beautiful. Afro hairstyle. You didn't just wear an afro, you stepped into a room and announced it. Towering, bold, and beautifully unbothered, the afro wasn't simply a style choice, it was a cultural reset. While the shape itself had deep African roots, it truly roared to life during the 1960s civil rights movement. It wasn't about trends, it was about truth. Black men and women began embracing their natural textures in defiance of a society that told them straightened hair was professional or pretty. And it wasn't just about self-expression, it was political. Angela Davis didn't just speak about liberation, she wore it on her head. Every tightly coiled strand stood for pride, power, and a connection to ancestry that refused to be erased. Here's a powerful little truth. In traditional African societies, hair often signified one's tribe, age, and status. So when Black Americans reclaimed the afro, they weren't just choosing a look, they were reconnecting with legacy. Even today, the afro holds its place in fashion and activism alike. It's been modernized, reimagined, and reshaped. But its spirit remains untouched. Because sometimes, the boldest thing you can do is wear your hair exactly as it grows. Glitter eyeshadow. Every now and then, a beauty trend comes along that doesn't just shimmer, it defines an entire mood. Glitter eyeshadow was exactly that in the late 70s. Loud, unapologetic, and completely irresistible. While subtlety reigned in some circles, disco culture was having none of it. We wanted sparkle. We wanted our eyelids to catch the light from every mirror ball in the room. Back then, glitter wasn't always the safest choice. Some folks swiped on craft glitter like it was eyeshadow, not realizing they were basically gluing tiny shards of plastic to their faces. But we didn't care. The goal was to shine, and a little eye irritation was just part of the price. I still remember the first time I wore glitter to a dance. Silver flakes with a hint of lavender. It creased, it flaked, and halfway through the night, I probably looked like I'd slept in my makeup. But I felt invincible. Thankfully, things have come a long way. Today's cosmetic-grade glitters are safer, smoother, and way more wearable. Still, nothing beats the thrill of those early experiments. Standing in the bathroom, palette in hand, trying to sparkle our way into a night we'd never forget. Graphic white eyeliner. It started with a single line, sharp, white, and completely unexpected. In a world where eyeliner had long lived in the shadows of black and brown, white burst onto the scene like a neon sign on a quiet street. It wasn't soft. It wasn't subtle. It was bold, graphic, unapologetic, and it changed the way eyes looked back at you in the mirror. Instead of deepening mystery, white liner did the opposite. It opened things up. Eyes looked wide, awake, almost otherworldly, framed in floating shapes and crisp angles that felt more like art than makeup. It danced across lids in double wings, carved negative space with precision, and gave everyday faces a dash of editorial drama. The look was daring, futuristic, and somehow still playful, like Twiggy took a detour through a spaceship. It pulled from mod fashion, winked at sci-fi films, and found its way into bedrooms turned salons where teens practiced with trembling hands and shaky mirrors. And that was the beauty of it. White eyeliner wasn't just about trends. It was about transformation. It gave ordinary mornings a jolt of electric confidence and reminded us all that sometimes the brightest statements come from the most unexpected places. Monochromatic makeup. Funny how one color, just one, can pull a whole look together and still feel like magic. Monochromatic makeup isn't new, but it's aged like fine wine. While today it's praised for its minimalism and elegance, this trend has actually been around since the 1950s, quietly stealing scenes with its understated charm. Back then, matching your blush to your lipstick wasn't just stylish, it was expected. And honestly, there's something comforting about that kind of visual harmony. The beauty of this technique lies in its simplicity. You choose a single color family, say peach, rose, or bronze, and use variations of that tone on your eyes, cheeks, and lips. The result? A look that feels effortlessly put together. Like you've planned every detail, even if you haven't. It works for bold color lovers too. Think berry tones in winter or coral shades for summer. Here's a fun fact. Monochromatic makeup doesn't mean boring. In fact, using brighter tones like lilac or tangerine can make just as strong a statement as a smoky eye without the guesswork. More than a makeup technique, it's a vibe, a soft focus filter for your face. And in a world that often feels chaotic, this kind of visual balance never goes out of style. Punk makeup. If glam was polished and pretty, punk was raw and ready to pick a fight with your eyeliner. Punk makeup in the late 70s wasn't about perfection. It was about making a statement loud enough to echo through a crowd. Picture jet black liner scrawled thick around the eyes, lipstick smeared on like war paint, and blush applied like a dare. Haphazard, harsh, and deliberately defiant. This wasn't just makeup. It was protest on a face. Inspired by the gritty streets of London and fueled by bands like the Sex Pistols, punk beauty took its cues from DIY culture. No Sephora in sight, just whatever you could find. Black kohl pencils, safety pins, drugstore shadows, and a heavy hand. Designer Vivienne Westwood helped give the movement its signature sneer, but punks took it and ran wild. And it wasn't about gender either. Guys and girls alike wore their eyeliner like armor, their mohawks and face paint screaming rebellion with every glare. What made punk makeup unforgettable wasn't its technique, it was its attitude. It said, "I don't care what beautiful looks like. I'll define it myself." And for a whole generation, that message was more powerful than any red lipstick ever could be. Growing up in the 1970s gave us irreplaceable memories. Which moment from your childhood still makes you smile? Share it below. And if you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss our next nostalgic journey.